Subscribe, 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 subscribe.
Subscribe, 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 subscribe,
subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe,
Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe.
Subscribe, 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 subscribe,
subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe.
subscribe, 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 subscribe.
subscribe, 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 subscribe.